Lexie Hull delivered the game's most savage moment, a direct, verbal undressing of MVP Aya Wilson after the final buzzer. Wilson, who had been suffocated by Indiana's defense all game long, was visibly seething. She couldn't get the usual easy buckets, couldn't command the paint like she usually does, and by the end, she couldn't contain her emotions either. The frustration boiled over post-game, but before she could fully erupt, Hull made sure she understood exactly why the Fever had just taken control of the series. One pointed comment. One ego-checked MVP.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
One statement that said, "We're not scared of you." It wasn't just trash talk, it was personal and it was earned. Hull, Aaliyah Boston, and the rest of the Fever had turned in a performance built on defensive brilliance and composure. Boston's interior dominance locked Wilson down, while Sims and Mitchell spread the floor with smart passing and timely scoring. Every possession looked like it had been drilled in practice 100 times. And somehow, even without their superstar rookie, Indiana looked more complete than the Aces. Wilson's tantrum after the loss, paired with the Aces' complaints about officiating, couldn't mask the truth. The better team won. Vegas looked disconnected, rushed, and increasingly rattled as the game slipped away. Meanwhile, Indiana stayed focused, weathered every run, and turned adversity into motivation. Hull's confrontation with Wilson was the emotional exclamation mark, proof that the Fever weren't there to play nice or bow to a dynasty. Coach Stephanie White's game plan was tactical perfection. The Fever pressured the ball, limited second-chance points, and pushed the Aces into foul trouble by playing smarter, not harder. Every bit of momentum the Aces built was immediately answered by Indiana's calm execution. The officials didn't beat Vegas. Indiana did. The win marked more than just an upset. It signaled a possible changing of the guard. A team that had spent the last few years in league obscurity suddenly looks like a legitimate contender, even with half a roster. And with Game 5 looming, the Aces are now on the back foot, emotionally shaken and exposed. The Fever haven't just challenged expectations, they've shattered them. Lexie Hull's message to Aya Wilson wasn't just trash talk. It was a warning. Indiana is here. They're not backing down. And if this game was any indication, they might just be the most dangerous team left standing. This wasn't just an upset. It was a reality check. The Indiana Fever walked into a playoff battle against the two-time defending champions, the Las Vegas Aces, with 6 players out. That includes Caitlin Clark, the star, the draw, the center of attention. She wasn't on the court. And still, Indiana didn't just compete. They won. They beat the reigning champs. They beat the team with the reigning MVP. They beat the narrative. And they did it with defense, strategy, composure, and a level of resilience that Vegas couldn't match. The game itself was physical, intense, and filled with playoff tension from the tip-off. But it didn't end when the buzzer sounded. Because after the game, when Aya Wilson, frustrated, upset, emotional, voiced her displeasure with the officiating, it sparked one of the most brutally honest post-game moments of the year. Lexie Hull didn't hold back. She confronted Wilson's complaints with a statement that hit harder than anything that happened on the floor. "We didn't beat the refs. We beat you." That wasn't a throwaway comment. That was a message. A message to the Aces. A message to the league. A message to everyone still pretending the Fever don't belong here. Let's get something straight. Lexie Hull didn't just guard Aya Wilson. She contained her. She pressured. She disrupted. She rotated with precision. And when Wilson tried to get in her rhythm, Indiana sent help. Aaliyah Boston anchored the paint and refused to give up easy buckets. Strategic fouling slowed the Aces down without losing control. And while Vegas unraveled, Indiana held firm. This wasn't an upset born from chaos or luck. It was built on execution. Aaliyah Boston showed why she's the defensive future of the league. Her ability to hold her ground, block out, and force Wilson into inefficient looks was a clinic in disciplined post-play. Kelsey Mitchell, as always, delivered when it mattered most. Her shot-making in crunch time was a reminder that the Fever don't need one star to succeed. They just need poise. Odyssey Sims played with veteran grit, doing the small things, timely passes, big rebounds, drawing fouls that don't always show up in headlines but win playoff games. And then there was Hull. The verbal response to Wilson was just the cherry on top. Her game was already speaking volumes. She matched intensity with control and then sealed it with that cold post-game reminder. It wasn't just a clapback. It was a pivot point. Because let's talk about what was really going on. The Aces were unraveling. They didn't expect this. Vegas came into the series with expectations, hardware, and headlines. They had the MVP, the championship banners, the elite talent. But when Indiana showed up with defensive schemes and discipline, Vegas fell apart in the one area they've historically dominated: composure. Wilson, flustered by the defensive pressure, didn't adapt. She got frustrated. She turned to the officials instead of the basket. And when that frustration turned into public criticism, Lexie Hull responded in real time. That moment mattered, because it wasn't just personal. It symbolized everything this Indiana Fever team stands for. No excuses, no fear, no backing down. They are not here to play sidekick to anyone else's dynasty. And when the Aces started pointing fingers, the Fever pointed to the scoreboard. It would have been easy to blame injuries or momentum or Clark's absence. But Indiana didn't just survive without their star. They exposed Vegas. This team has been built around structure. It's not about one player. It's about system, cohesion, trust. And that trust was on full display in this win. Every screen was set with intent. Every rotation on defense was coordinated. Every possession had purpose. Meanwhile, Vegas looked lost. They fouled unnecessarily. They took rush shots. They broke their own game plan under pressure. And when they looked to the refs for answers, Indiana made them pay for it. Let's talk about the officiating. Yes, it was physical. Yes, the calls were tight. But the idea that the Fever somehow benefited from the refs? That doesn't match the film. Indiana earned this win with strategy. They played within the rules. They adjusted to the whistle. They used it to disrupt the Aces' rhythm without sacrificing control. They did what great playoff teams do: adapt. And what did Vegas do? Complain. That's why Lexie Hull's comment cut so deep. She wasn't just shutting down a narrative. She was confronting a mindset. A mindset that says, we didn't lose. The refs stole it. But Hull and the Fever saw it differently. They didn't win in spite of the whistle. They won because they executed through it. That's the kind of mental toughness that takes a team beyond one good game. It creates a playoff identity. And the Fever have found theirs. They are no longer the team with potential. They are a problem. They are outworking title contenders. They are trusting their system. They are creating mismatches and punishing mistakes. And now, they are one win away from the WNBA Finals. Let that sink in. One win, with half their roster out, without their biggest star. And still, they've outplayed the champs. That should terrify the rest of the league. Because if Indiana is doing this now, what happens when they're healthy? What happens when Clark returns and joins a team that's already discovered how to win without her? You don't get to call them a one-player show anymore. This is a fully formed unit. A squad led by Boston's defense, Sims' leadership, Mitchell's shot creation, and Hull's fire. And speaking of Lexie Hull, this moment has redefined her in the eyes of the league. From draft reach to defensive specialist. From role player to vocal leader. From overlooked to unforgettable. Her confrontation with Wilson wasn't arrogance. It was accountability. It was the tone the Fever needed and the league wasn't ready for. Because now, the Aces are the ones on their heels. Becky Hammon, known for her composure and elite adjustments, now has one game to fix a system that's been completely neutralized by Indiana's strategy. Wilson has one game to reclaim dominance. The Fever have one game to rewrite their history. A decade without a finals. A franchise that's been in rebuild mode for years. And now, they're one game away from flipping the WNBA on its head. Game 5 isn't just another playoff showdown. It's a battle for control of the league's future. If Indiana wins, it will mark the beginning of a new era, where no team is safe, where no MVP is above critique, where no franchise gets to coast on reputation. Lexie Hull made that clear. So now, the league waits. Will the Aces respond with pride or collapse under pressure? Will the Fever finish the job and send the champs packing? We're about to find out. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Who takes Game 5, Indiana or Vegas? Did Hull cross the line, or was she just telling the truth? And if you're loving this level of playoff drama, rivalry tension, and underdog fire, subscribe. Because whether or not the Fever make the finals, this moment, it already changed everything. Lexie Hull didn't just embarrass Aya Wilson because she could. She did it because it needed to be done. Because in the WNBA, where narratives are tightly controlled and MVPs are treated like royalty, someone finally decided to talk back. And it landed like a bomb. Let's go back to the court. The Indiana Fever weren't just undermanned. They were depleted. 6 players gone, including Caitlin Clark, the face of the franchise, the headline driver, the one name that casual fans couldn't stop talking about all season. So what happens? They beat the defending champions. Not scrape by, not luck out. They beat them. Physically, mentally, tactically. And then when the game ends and the camera pans to Aya Wilson, one of the league's biggest stars, she's not just disappointed. She's furious. She throws shade at the officiating. She implies the refs gave the game away. She suggests that maybe, just maybe, the Fever didn't earn it. And Lexie Hull walks right up and drops the line of the postseason. We didn't beat the refs. We beat you. No theatrics. No shouting. Just ice-cold truth. The kind that cuts deeper than any stat line. Because it wasn't just about that game. It was about every time a team like Indiana gets counted out. Every time they're told they don't belong on the same floor as the top seeds. Every time their wins are dismissed as flukes. Hull put a stop to it with one sentence. And make no mistake, Aya Wilson heard it. The Aces heard it. The entire league heard it. Because what Indiana is doing right now is more than just advancing in the playoffs. They are tearing down the hierarchy. They're redefining what it means to be dangerous in the W. They didn't need Caitlin Clark to dominate headlines this time. They didn't need a 30-point night from a superstar. They didn't need to win the popularity contest. They needed defense, strategy, grit, and a group of women who simply refused to fold. That's how you win in October. And that's exactly what they did. Aaliyah Boston was relentless. She put a defensive masterclass on the floor, straight up neutralizing Aya Wilson in the second half. Not because she's bigger, faster, or flashier, but because she's smarter. She stayed vertical, baited the foul calls, disrupted the post entries, and dictated the rhythm. Kelsey Mitchell kept delivering dagger jumpers. Odyssey Sims played like she was 25 again, diving for loose balls, drawing fouls, leading huddles with veteran calm. And Hull, she did what most players won't. She stood between a star and her narrative and spoke up. Wilson had a temper tantrum. Hull gave her a reality check. That moment will go down as one of the most iconic of the postseason, not just for the sass, but for what it represented. A shift. This wasn't about rivalry. It wasn't about showboating. It was about accountability. Because this league has been walking a tightrope. It wants to elevate its stars, but not at the expense of competition. It wants parity, but still clings to dynasties. And now, the Fever are blowing that whole balance wide open. Because let's be honest, if Indiana wins Game 5, there's no more cute story. There's no more Caitlin Clark and the rest. There's just Indiana. As a problem for Vegas, a problem for the league's pre-packaged storylines, and a problem for every team that thought the finals would be a walk through familiar territory. If Indiana reaches the finals, it won't be because of a single player. It will be because they built something bigger than any one name. And now they're one win away from proving it. Vegas has had the pressure all year. They were the target, the standard. But when it came time to fight back, when they were pushed out of rhythm, they unraveled. Blaming the refs doesn't fix that. But Indiana's system exploited it. Every drive was strategic. Every double team was timed. Every foul was intentional. This was playoff basketball at its highest level, not from the team with the rings, but from the team with nothing to lose. That's what Lexie Hull was speaking to. We beat you, because they did. No excuses, no shortcuts, no bailout whistles. And that's what makes this team so dangerous moving forward. Because if you can take down the two-time champs without your franchise player and still have the nerve to go with their MVP in the postgame, that's not just confidence. That's control. They didn't panic. They didn't fold when Wilson started scoring in the second. They didn't try to play hero ball. They stuck to the plan, and Vegas couldn't handle it. Now we head into Game 5. Everything on the line. And this isn't just a playoff decider. This is a culture clash. Vegas, the polished, dominant, star-laden dynasty. Indiana, the gritty, tactical, nobody-believed-in-us fighters. It's not just a basketball game anymore. It's a referendum on how the WNBA is changing. Because if the Fever win, the message is loud and clear. It's not about names anymore. It's about who wants it more. And right now, Indiana wants it bad. This team has tasted adversity all season. Injuries, media criticism, disrespect, and they've turned all of it into fuel. Coach Stephanie White has her players believing. She's built a system that thrives under pressure, one that doesn't rely on one player to win, but demands everyone buy in. That's why the Fever are thriving. Not because they're lucky, but because they're prepared. And Vegas? They weren't ready for a fight. Now they're on the ropes. Game 5 is going to test everything. Can Aya Wilson channel her frustration into focus? Can Becky Hammon finally outmaneuver a team that seems to have her figured out? Or will Lexie Hull and the Fever end a dynasty and start a new one in the same night? This is where legacies are built and destroyed. One more win for Indiana changes everything. And if they pull it off, that line from Lexie Hull, it won't just be a soundbite. It'll be a defining moment in a postseason full of shockwaves. Game 5 isn't just about who advances. It's about who survives the fallout. Because no matter what happens, this series has cracked the image of invincibility around the Las Vegas Aces and lit a fire under the Indiana Fever that the league wasn't ready for. Lexie Hull's words, "We beat you," weren't just a clapback. They were a shot across the bow. They hit Aya Wilson, sure, but they also hit every preconceived idea about who gets to be the main character in the WNBA. And for Vegas, that loss exposed something deeper than just poor execution. It exposed a lack of control. For the better part of 2 years, the Aces have been able to lean on their talent, their chemistry, their star power. They didn't need to grind wins out of the dirt. They didn't need to face the pressure of being underdogs. They didn't need to answer hard questions because they were usually the ones asking them. But then came Indiana, a team written off before the postseason started. A team with rookies, backups, and fill-ins suddenly stepping into the biggest moments of their careers. A team that, on paper, had no business taking this series to 5 games, let alone doing it without Caitlin Clark. And yet, they've outplayed Vegas in every phase that matters. Grit, adjustments, and desire. Stephanie White deserves her flowers. The coaching clinic she's put on in this series has been surgical. She's not just managing a game. She's dismantling a dynasty piece by piece. Every play call, every substitution, every defensive scheme has been about exposing Vegas's comfort zones and ripping them away. And it's worked. Aya Wilson, for all her greatness, has looked rattled. Not every possession, not every quarter, but enough. She's still putting up numbers, but they're coming harder, slower, more contested. Aaliyah Boston has made her earn every inch. And when that frustration boiled over into post-game comments about officiating, it showed just how deep Indiana had gotten into her head. That's when Lexie Hull struck. Her comment wasn't trash talk. It was the final blow in a mental war that the Fever had been winning all game. And Wilson's reaction? It told us everything. Because when you're winning, no one complains about the refs. But when you lose to a team that's shorthanded, overlooked, and outmatched on paper, it stings. It disrupts everything you thought you knew about where you stood. Vegas didn't expect to be here. They didn't expect to be on the brink. They didn't expect to be playing Game 5 with their backs against the wall, their dynasty questioned, and their pride bruised. But this is what the Fever do now. They expose weakness. They turn adversity into leverage. They don't just take the punch. They counter with force. Every time, Kelsey Mitchell's scoring has been dagger after dagger. She's playing with the kind of poise that kills momentum. She doesn't need to say a word. Her mid-range jumper says it all. Odyssey Sims is the stabilizer. She's not here for style points. She's here to win. And her presence on the court is like a veteran quarterback, controlling the pace, reading the defense, and striking when the opening appears. And then there's Boston, who's proving that defense can win championships. She's not just guarding Wilson. She's setting the tone for the entire team. Her body language, her rotations, her rebounds, they scream confidence. And Hull, she's no longer a role player. She's a disruptor, the kind of player who doesn't just frustrate opponents. She redefines matchups. She's the one Vegas forgot to prepare for, and now they can't stop talking about her. That's power. And the scary part? Indiana's playing without their biggest defensive threat. Caitlin Clark is still sidelined. And yet, the Fever are thriving. That's not an accident. That's not some Cinderella magic. That's what happens when every player on the roster believes they belong. And now they do. They're one win from the finals. One win from breaking every bracket. One win from forcing the league to take them seriously. Because if they pull it off, if they go into Game 5 and eliminate the Aces, this isn't just an upset. It's a shift. A shift in league power. A shift in who the story is about. A shift in what teams value. Grit over glamour. Execution over ego. And Vegas? They're staring down the barrel of irrelevance if they don't respond. Everything they've built over the last few years is on the line. Legacy, respect, dominance. It's all tied to what happens in Game 5. They have to win. And that's what makes this so electric. Because Indiana doesn't. The Fever weren't even supposed to be here. Every step beyond the first round is icing. And yet they're walking into this elimination game like they've been here before. That's the pressure flip. The Aces have everything to lose. The Fever? They already proved their point. But don't think they're satisfied. This team didn't come here to prove they could hang with the champs. They came to end them, to finish what they started, to take the disrespect, the dismissals, the stacked odds, and turn it into a finals appearance. And if that happens, Lexie Hull's quote won't just live in this series. It'll live in league history. A defining moment where the underdog stared down the dynasty and didn't blink. So now the countdown is on. Game 5. Winner goes to the finals. Loser goes home. And one question hangs over everything. Will the Aces rise like champions or collapse like a team that got too comfortable? Can Indiana finish the job? Or will the weight of the moment catch up? You've seen the storylines. You've seen the drama. You've heard the quote. Now we see who backs it up. Drop your predictions in the comments. Is this the end of the Vegas era? Or will Io Wilson come back with fire and silence the doubters? Subscribe if you're here for the chaos, the clapbacks, and the court takeovers. Because this postseason, it's rewriting everything.